Be'ez Hashem, tonight we're going to continue a little bit with Magid, the end of Magid, and then go on to Motzi Matza, Mora, Korach. We'll see how far we go. So we spoke a little bit earlier that there's a machlokes between the Mekubalim, between the Rashash and Mishnas Chassidim, that when we say a Ma'ariv, that during Ma'ariv a person experiences Gadlus. So the question is, what happens afterwards? Does the Gadlus leave? Especially in Ma'ariv that we say Hallel, which we'll see now. That's the next part of the Haggadah. We say Hallel. Does it mean that we are experiencing Hallel Alu Avli Hashem and B'tzeis Yisrael Mitzrayim, and we're experiencing the Gadlus, the greatness that we're experiencing during the Seder? Does that leave? Or the Rashash says it doesn't leave, it's just more on a pneumistic level, and now there's going to be also on a chitzonistic level, more on a doing level. And we'll see how this Hallel, this idea of doing Hallel, is not just with words, but over here, Hallel, on the night of the Seder, takes on a form of action and connected to the meal. To the Shulchan Aruch is actually part of Hallel. So first, there's a shiloh that's on many of the Rishonim asked, which by the end of Magid, we say Hallel. So the Mishnah says, that's machlokes in Beisham and Beisilo. Do you say just Haluk Avdei Hashem? Do we just say that we're Avdei Hashem? We start off saying that first passage. That's the opinion of Beishamai. Beis Hillel says that the opinion is we also have to say B'tzeis Yisrael Mitzrayim, which means that we're not only talking about that we're thankful for being Avdei Hashem, but we're saying what actually happened, B'tzeis Yisrael Mitzrayim, that we actually became a people through the going out of Egypt. This is the opinion of Beis Hillel, and this is la halacha. The question that the Rishonim ask on this is, how come we do not say a bracha, a special blessing on Hallel? Normally, when we say a bracha, when we say Hallel, we make a bracha on Hallel. Even if it's a minig, okay, then there's a different machlokes there, Menatavik, etc., whether we say a bracha. But generally, when we do a mitzvah, we say a bracha. So why don't we say a bracha on Hallel? This is what the Rishonim ask. So the Ozer Ruah in Hilchos Krishma, Sivan Mem Gimel writes like this: Kriyas Hallel v'leil psachim, an idea of Kriyas Hallel and leil psachim. So he says that there's one reason is the fishim of sikimo ve'oichos udasei. That one reason is that we don't say a bracha, a blessing, on Hallel, because in the middle of Hallel we're actually going to eat a meal. Like we'll see soon, we're going to say the first part of Hallel, then we're going to do Motzi Matza, and we're going to do Mora, Korach, Shulchan Aruch. We're going to have the whole meal, and then later, by Hallel, after Beirach, after we do the bracha, after we bench, we're going to say the second part of Hallel. So since the second part of Hallel is going to say much later, so therefore there's a hefsek, and therefore we don't say a bracha. This is the first opinion, and let's keep this in mind. This first opinion of the Ozer, which means because there's a hefsek. The second reason that he brings down is the Shem Reb Haigon, in the name of Reb Haigon, from the 9th century in Baghdad, and he brings down from Haigon is that on the night of Pesach is Ein Elika Koyer b'Torah. It's like reading the Torah. That means it doesn't have a din, doesn't have a law of shira, but it's more. I'm sorry, it doesn't have a din of. It doesn't have a din of kriya, but it has more a din of shira. Not calling, but actually shira. It's a song. Yeah, we say b'Torah shira. The Ran in Psachim, the Ran actually writes on Daf Kuf Yud Ches, which is the Gemara that talks about Hallel. The Ran brings down from Haigon, says Haigon Kosev Tshuva. Haigon writes in the Tshuva Sagoinim, She'em Mevorchim Hallel Shebeleil Psachim Ligmer Sahallel, because on the night of Pesach we don't say a bracha for conclusion of Hallel. She'enon Korim Oisa B'Torahs Korim Elo B'Torahs Amashira. Because tonight we're not saying it like we would say a mitzvah to read the Hallel, but it's more like saying shir, like singing a song. So what's the oimik of this? What is the depth of this? What this actually means? What it's saying is that tonight, the shira is a spontaneous expression of song. It's something that comes naturally. So when there's an obligation to say Hallel, there's a mitzvah to say Hallel, because we were yotzim, mafel la'oira. There's an idea of that we were saved. So we feel there's an obligation to say Hallel. So then there's a mitzvah, and then it's kikoira. Then it's like a kriya. But when it's like a shira, when it's like a song, it says no, you don't have to say we don't make a bracha because it's something that's coming like spontaneous. It's a spontaneous expression of our gratefulness and thankfulness. Like the Rambam writes in the beginning of Hilchos Pesach and Perikas that the whole idea of L'saper is to speak about the miracles and the wonders and to be Mishabeach HaKadosh Baruch Hu, to thank Hashem for everything. So therefore, it's more a humanistic, natural expression versus being a mitzvah. So this is the simple reason why we make a bracha. So we have these two reasons in the Goinim from Haigon. What do we do tonight? Tonight we actually divide the Hallel in two. We say the first part of Hallel at the end of Magid. The second part of Hallel will be one of the Simonei HaSeder. One of the marks of the Seder will be the idea of saying the second part of Hallel. The simple reason why they're divided is so that that both parts of Hallel should be able to say Shvach. We will be able to say gratefulness and thankfulness to Hashem on all 4 cups of wine. So the first cup of wine will say the Kiddush. The second cup of wine will say the first part of Hallel. The third cup of wine, we will say the blessings after the meal. And the fourth cup of wine will say Hallel. So each one has a shvach, has something grateful. But on a deeper level, the reason why Hallel tonight, on the night of Pesach, is divided into 2 is because there are 2 parts of Hallel. And this is what the Gemara and Avkuf talks about, that there's 2 parts of the Hallel. There's the Hallel, the part of the Hallel which speaks about our past and our present, which is a story about us going out of Egypt in the past and us experiencing B'chol Dor V'Dor, B'chol Yom V'Yom, experiencing as if we were going out of Egypt, which is in our present state. This is one level of Hallel. This is the Hallel that we say, and that's the Hallel from the past. And then there's the Hallel which is anticipation and for redemption for the future. So this is a Hallel that we're going to say at the end of the Seder, after we eat the Mar, and after we eat Korach, and after we eat all these items, all these mitzvahs, we're going to talk about redemption and Geula L'Shana Haba B'Yerushalayim. Now, so what are we saying now? What the first opinion, what the Oyer Zerua says, is that the reason why we don't make a blessing is because we're going to experience the meal within that place. So let's hold that thought, and then we're going to go further a little bit deeper. When we talk about Shulchan Aruch, we'll understand what it means to eat. That the act of eating itself is an expression. This is what the Rashash says, that it's bechitzonius. It's an expression of giving shvach, of being grateful in the act of eating itself. But the next simon, the next thing that we do on the Seder night, is we wash our hands. It's rachza. So this is going to be the second time that we wash our hands. We washed our hands before with urchatz, which we talked about before. That idea of urchatz, both the 2 syllables, the two nekudas, that there was washing hand before. So some Rishonim, like the Mordechai write, that the reason why we wash twice our hands, according to Pshat, according to the little interpretation of the mitzvah, is because of Heschadas, because it's possible that we were Masiach Das. We did not keep our mind in tension and our intention on the washing of the hands, and it's possible that our hands became somewhat dirty or something connected to something that's impure, so therefore we have to wash our hands because of Heschadas. So therefore the Mordechai says that really you don't have to wash a second time. However, the Beis Yosef in Taf Ayin Hey, and right away in the beginning, brings down the Mordechai, the Beis Yosef, and he says that even though the Gemara Psachim in Kuf Tesvav says, Itmar Tinos Adayim Trei Zimno Lamali, the Gemara says, why do we have to wash our hands twice? So the Gemara says, that since we have to say the Haggadah and we have to say Hallel, so it's possible that we're going to make a hefsek. We're going to lose our intention, our focus on the first initial washing, so we should wash our hands a second time. But the Beis Yosef says that no, that we have to wash our hands a second time no matter what. And the poskim write that even if we weren't Masiach Das, we should still wash our hands. Maybe not without a bracha, but we certainly wash our hands. So the idea is to wash our hands twice, the second time. So in washing your hands twice, the idea, why do we wash our hands twice? And this itself is to arouse the question. This is still part of the last step of katnos here, that we do something unusual, which the child is going to ask a question. Remember, we learned from the Maral, the Bach brought down the Maral, that says when we came to the idea of urchatz, and he said about karpas. I'm sorry about karpas. He says that you dip it in, and you dip it in with a kazayas, according to the Rambam, and you make a bracha, and you dip it in the charaisas. So the Maral writes that the reason is because the wonder that the child is supposed to ask, like me at the Tanoikis, is not with the first dipping, but with the second dipping. Because the second dipping is going to look exactly like the first dipping, the child's going to ask the question, why are we dipping twice? What's this double dipping? Why are we dipping again? The same thing also with rachza. The rachza is that we have to wash our hands again. And the child now is going to ask the question, why do we wash our hands again? But this washing our hands is now done with a bracha, with a blessing. Previously, that washing hands was done without a blessing, which means that it was just sur meira. It was just trying to get rid of something that was negative. Yes, it comes after the idea of Kaddish, because first is godless, first is greatness, and then comes katnos. But here the washing our hands is already on a higher level, and it's washing our hands already with a bracha. And here the idea of washing hands is be'an arachitz. That the idea of be'an arachitz, rachza, also comes from the word trust. That we have total trust. We're entering into a place of higher moichin. Higher moichin, the moichin of moichin the Abba, which is going to be the moichin, the intelligence that is drawn down through the eating of matzah, which is the idea of beyond mind, which is a type of clarity and openness and expansiveness and a knowing that's even beyond taste and beyond pleasure, beyond the intellectual understanding of something, but a certain intuitive knowing. This is what we're going to do. Bein Arachitz, this is going to be the milcha de nusa, the bread of faith that we're going to eat through in the matzah, which we're going to do very shortly. So this is the idea of rachza, which is very specific for this night of Pesach, that we're washing our hands for the second time. Now comes the idea of Motzi and then Matzah. And these are actually two separate things. Now, every year we have to make a Motzi. I mean, every day we have to make a Motzi, and certainly when we wash our hands for Lechem Mishnah on Shabbos or also on Yom Tov, we need two chalas or two breads, and we make a bracha. But tonight is something very unique, which is the bracha, the blessing of HaMotzi is also on the poor man's bread. Normally it's on two full breads or two full matzah, however you're ranking. But tonight, the Motzi is also on the prusa, also on the broken bread. There's actually a machlokes rishonim, a big argument amongst the rishonim. What is, when you make, there's two brachas, there's Motzi and there's achilas matzah. You're making two blessings. One blessing is you're making a blessing for the Motzi, which is a blessing over bread, which you say over every piece of bread that you eat. And one is on the mitzvah of achilas matzah, on the mitzvah specifically to eating of matzah. So the simple pshat is you have actually three matzahs. So what do? The first bracha, the first blessing that you make on HaMotzi will be on the full matzah, which is the top matzah that hasn't been broken. Remember, we learned already by Yachatz that Ein Mavirim ala mitzvahs, so therefore you keep that top matzah according to Mos Rishayna, which we follow that halacha. So therefore the top matzah you make HaMotzi. And for the achilas matzah, for the mitzvah of eating the achilas matzah, when you make a blessing to eat the matzah, the bracha and the matzah, that goes on the prusa, that goes on the broken piece of bread. This is the simple pshat, and this is what the Bach writes b'Shem Arash, that's the pshat, because every Yom Tov you have to make on a full matzah, on a full challah, HaMotzi. Tonight you have also on the prusa, but the main thing is the achilas, the HaMotzi is on the full matzah, and the achilas matzah is on the broken matzah. However, the Tur brings down in Taf Ayin Hey, in the beginning also, that there's yesh mishayim shemevarach ala prusa hamoitzi v'ala shleim achilas matzah. There is an opinion in the Rishonim that it's actually the reverse, that you make the bracha of hamoitzi on the broken matzah, the matzah that's already broken from yachatz, and ala chilas matzah you make on the shlema, on the one that's actually complete. And perhaps this goes back to Gemara and Brachis, Lamed Tesvav Beis. The Gemara says, Amar Papa, Akol Moedim Pesach, Shemriach Prutza B'Soy Shlema B'Tzeya, that everyone agrees that on Pesach, the Gemara talks about making a bracha on something that's shalom, something that's complete. So it says on Pesach, we have to also make sure that we make a bracha on something that is broken. Because it's lechem oini, poor man's bread, so therefore hamoitzi also has to be on that poor man's bread. The Shulchan Aruch rules, this is what the Mechaber rules, the pshat, the simple interpretation of the Mechaber is, what we do basically is we yito yadav yivarach al-filos yadav yikach ha-matzahs keseder sheniach ha-prusa ben shtei ha-shlemas. What you do is you lift all three matzah and you make a bracha, both brachas. You make the bracha of hamoitzi, you're holding all three matzahs, the two full matzah with the broken matzah in between. So hamoitzi is chal, hamoitzi is also applicable to the broken matzah. And then you make alachilas matzah. Then you make a bracha on to eat achilas matzah. This is what the simple pshat of the Mechaber is. That's what we do. So you make both blessings on all three matzah. The contemporary most minig yisol, the minig of the Maril, etc., and is to actually let go of the third matzah when you make achilas matzah, when you make the second blessing. But the point is, what we're trying to say is that tonight, on the night of Pesach, we make a bracha of a motzi lechem in haaretz on something that's broken, which is obviously something very deep and something very profound. Which is the idea of yachatz, which we spoke before. That yachatz means that it's broken, or it means that it's only just a half. It's the recognition that we're only just a half. And tonight we recognize that our brokenness, our halfness, our incompleteness is what allows for the redemption to occur. That just like Klal Yisrael, just like Klal Yisrael were in a state that they said, we're in a state of exile, that the angels said that they're in a state of idol worship, they're in a state of idol worship. In other words, we were in a lowly state. On the 49th level of Tumah, which most Mukabbalim write, B'Shem Ari, unlike the Leshem, so we were in a very lowly state, and all of a sudden, suddenly, we experienced godless, something that came extraordinary, something that's beyond us was revealed to us, which means we were just humbled. We were like matzah, we were just a humble piece of bread, or even a broken piece of matzah, and Hashem revealed to us and brought us, induced us, and elevated us into a higher state of godless. And this is what the night of the Leil HaSeder is. Then, after we make achilas matzah and we make a motzi, we eat the matzah. So we eat the matzah, and the matzah is called milcha d'yemnusa. It's bread of faith, and also milcha d'smusa, the bread of healing. And there's a teaching that's brought down from the Rebbe's, brought down the shame of the Baal Shem Tov from the Arizal, and it was repeated by the Alter Rebbe, that the first night is milcha d'yemnusa. The first night is bread of faith, which means that it's moichin the Abba that comes down in a way, intelligence, of faith, of clarity that's beyond our rational comprehension, which was a certain sense of clarity, of intuition, that we know, we feel connected, we feel in the right place. And the second day is the healing. The healing that comes through the place of faith is a higher level of healing. So on one level, the idea of matzah is simple, pure faith. And like we mentioned already previously also, from the Maharal, that the idea of matzah is that it has no other ingredients. It doesn't even have the ingredient of time, which means that matzah represents something that's pure. Because it represents something that's pure, it represents the cause and not the effect. And this brings a sense of healing and wholeness. Matzah itself, in small gematria, is actually 18. Mem tzadik hey, mem is 4, tzadik is 9, hey is 5, is 18. So what do we have? That it represents life. It represents the giving of life. On a proper gematria, which means the regular gematria of mem tzadik hey, with the word itself is 136, which is brought down in Sforim, that 136 is the same gematria, the same numeric value of the word of tzoim, of fasting, which means matzah represents something that is transcendent, something that's beyond us, something that we were eating it, but we're receiving something, a nourishment that comes from a place that's bland. So the Gemara talks about, and we'll talk a little bit further about the idea of bala matzah is yotza. If you swallow matzah, you didn't chew the matzah, you're yotza the mitzvah. Bala marer lo yotza. But if you swallow marer and you didn't chew the marer, which we'll see later, that Rizal says you have to actually use your teeth. So if you're bala matzah, if you swallow matzah, you're yotza. Why? Because matzah represents something that's beyond reason. We don't need the process. We don't need to go through processes. What's the difference between swallowing and chewing something? Is that chewing represents that it's going through a process, that you're elevating, you're breaking it down, you're assimilating it idea. But matzah represents something that's transcendent, beyond, and it's beyond. However, ein atinu yidei likroya abba ad shetoim tam dagam. The Gemara says in Brachas Daf Mem that a child doesn't understand and doesn't know how to call father, which is moichin da abba, which represents the idea of the intelligence of the father, until he tastes grain, which means that there has to be taste. So a matzah on one hand represents soim, something that's transcendent beyond taste. On the other hand, it's actually also a rectification for das, because it goes back to the chet eitz das, the original chet eitz das. The original chet eitz das was that they damaged the das through eating wheat or wine, the different opinions, or teina. And here and Yedei Teda, and Hashem tells Avraham Avinu that Yedei Teda, you should know that the idea of das will go into exile, that your awareness, your consciousness will go into exile. And tonight is a tikkun for das. So in other words, matzah represents something that is transcendent, that it penetrates our entire das and transforms our das. And matzah is the only mitzvah, like some Sefer brings down, Choshen Mishpat and Ashmata Simon Kuf Tzadik Vav, that he brings down, that matzah is the only mitzvah that remains today, post Beis Hamikdash time, that actually post Temple time, where there's a mitzvah min HaTorah to eat. So matzah is a mitzvah of eating, which means we have to include matzah. Matzah has to penetrate the entire body. So on one hand, bala matzah is yotza, if we just swallow the matzah or yotza. But on the other hand, there has to be something that has to penetrate. So much so that the word matzah, it's also brought down Svarim, is a gematria of mammon, of money, which means sustenance. That has to, the bread of faith, the bread of moichin da'abba, has to internalize every single aspect in our life, even things that are connected to money. Even the things that are connected to the physicality. This is what happens on Motzi and Matzah. Then we come to Mar. So Mar is today, because on Matzah and Yichlu, the mitzvah of eating Mar today is midrabanan. It's only from our sages, because the mitzvah of Mar is really connected to the Achilas Pesach, to the idea of eating the Korban Pesach. And today that there's no Korban Pesach, the mitzvah is eating midrabanan. It's only from the sages. Not only, but it's from the sages. How much do we have to eat? So the Rosh writes that we have to eat at least a kazayas. We'll talk what Mar is, but you have to eat at least a kazayas. So we have to make we do not recite a Boyer Pri Adama, like the Rashba and Tosis brings down, because we already made a bracha on the karpas, we had it in mind. But we have to eat at least a kazayas, and we make a bracha ala chilas Mar. So the Rosh says, it's a big chiddush of the Rosh. The Rosh says that the reason why we have to eat a kazayas, why we have to eat a larger measurement of like an olive, of Mar, is because we make a bracha. Because we make the bracha lechilas Mar, so therefore we have to eat a kazayas. This is a very famous Rosh, and there's a Shagasaya in Simonei Kuf. I don't want to go through the whole Shagasaya, but the Shagasaya has a very big problem with this, and the Shagasaya says that it's not because that we have to eat a kazayas Mar, because if not, it brings many proofs. Some of the proofs we'll talk about soon, and it says not because of the bracha. That it can't be that the reason why we have to make why we have to eat a kazayas is because we make a bracha. It's circular reasoning, and the reason why we have to eat kazayas is a mitzvah to eat Mar. But the nekuda that what comes out from the Rosh, which is important for us to understand more al-pipnimius, is that Mar has to have a bracha. That's the nekuda. that when we say maror, when we eat maror, we have to know that there's a bracha on the maror. There's a blessing on eating something that's bitter tonight. Now, maror has to be bitter, not sharp. This is a misconception. Some people think that the maror has to be something that's sharp. Maror has to be something that is bitter. There's a Gemara, there's a Mishnah, the Mishnah in Lamates and Psachim. The Mishnah brings down the 5 things that were yotze the mitzvah. Now, this idea of eating maror, which we'll talk a little about what maror is in a moment, this idea of eating maror is specifically after you eat matzah. In other words, lahalacha, if you end up eating maror before matzah, yes, you're yotze the mitzvah, it's fine. But if you go I'll simple pshat in the Gemara in Pesachim, Daf Kuf Yudal and Aleph and the Rashba and Toises, you'll see that the simple pshat in the Gemara is al matzahs u'merorim yechlu. It says that you should eat it al matzah and maror, so which means that you can only eat maror after you eat matzah, after you've already eaten the bread of faith, and after you've already internalized the brokenness of the matzah, and you ate the top matzah, which represents the letter Yud. The middle, the singularity unity, which is Chachma, which we spoke of by Yachatz according to Dari, and you also ate the middle matzah, which represents both the bread of affliction, which we spoke about yesterday, and also the bread of freedom, because it represents both breads, and it has both the Dalet and the Vav, which together create the letter Yud, Hey, which is now connected to the Yud K, the higher level of Moichin, of Abba, the higher level of intelligence of Moichin, the Abba. Now that we have a higher level of intelligence, a higher level of understanding, now we can go ahead and make a bracha, make a blessing, and actually eat maror and sweetened ideas of maror. So we take something that's maror, that's bitter, not sharp, something that's bitter, and we dip it into charoisis. And charoisis is, yes, it also represents the idea of slavery and the cement that was created, but also represents it also represents the idea of the fruits that are connected to redemption. So we dip it, we take this maror, which represents merirus. Merirus means bitterness, and merirus is connected, that the Chazal connect maror to Miriam. The Chazal tell us that Miriam is connected to maror, that the 100 she'ika shibudim shel Yisrael and she'ashirim the medrash she'ashirim base she'ika shibudim shel Yisrael in time shmoina v'sheishanim hayu mishashana Miriam was 86 years from the time that Miriam was born, because shel kachnik shema Miriam. Therefore, the medrash says her name is called Miriam al shum shem vaymaras chayim, from the language of vaymaras chayim, that it was bitter. So the idea of Miriam is connected to bitter, to something that's bitter. But what does bitterness mean? Bitterness means that bitterness is not depression. Bitterness means, merirus, like the Alter Rebbe explains in Tanya, merirus means that you feel that something is missing. Merirus creates tshuka, like the Shem Shmuel talks about in Miriam, that it creates desire, it creates longing, it creates dreaming. Miriam was the person that was not satisfied with the status quo. She was dreaming and she was scheming. She believed in the possibility. That's the idea of merirus. So what does it mean to eat the merirus? What we're saying is, now we understand that when we dip the maror into charoisis, we understand that the merirus, the sense of lack, the sense of, because of that we feel the longing and the desire and the yearning to be closer, to be connected. This in itself is actually a positive thing, because it brought us to a higher place. And therefore, the Arizal Shar Kavonis writes that maror is gematria 446, which is the same numeric value as the word mavis. That even though it feels bitter and it's hard to swallow and it's difficult, we actually now have faith. And we know it's not just the faith. We have the das, and we have the moich and the abba, which we draw down through matzah, that we understand, and it's clear to us how this longing and this yearning is transformative, and how this mirror has actually brought us into a higher place. Now today, we actually take, it's a side note, today most Ashkenazic Jews take horseradish from maror. The simple reason why we take horseradish from maror, we're not certain, unless we'll go into the Gemara, because the Gemara actually says, the Gemara seems to say that chazeres, Chazeres is the ultimate. Chazeres, and the Gemara calls it chasa. My chasa, the chasa chmad elu. That Hashem had compassion over us. And the Gemara says, Mar loimelach, my Mar is that shechlas erach b'sefer kasha. Just like this Mar, this chasa, this leaf, what we'll call romaine lettuce, is in the beginning rach, but and its root, it's kasha, it's harsh. The same thing, chilasam rach v'sefer kasha. The same thing also in Egypt, it was chilasam rach v'sefer kasha. Now most Ashkenazic Jews today and around the world eat horseradish. And the reason for that is the reason why we don't eat chazaris. And if you look at the Alter Rebbe, even in Alter Rebbe, where in Tafai and Gimel and Simon Lamed, he writes, even though all the 5 types are all considered mar, it's better to buy chazaris. Chazaris, what we'll call romaine lettuce. Al derech is by lenient esig, like a special esig that you want to get. Even though it doesn't have that same bitterness like horseradish, it's when it's the kalach shelo nasa mar ma'od, and that's why it's called mar. And afshi mesuk, even if it's sweet, fisha mitzvah mar hu zeichel mashem mara mitzvah chayv v'seim. He brings on this gemara, avoid the sperach v'nishalom hem d'chilu perach, and then it became kasha. First it was soft, and then it became kasha. So the simple reason why we use horseradish is more connected, like the Tosfos Yom Tov brings down over there in that Gemara Pesachim, and that Gos Maimonides, and Chosamos Matzah bring down, because it was something that was found, and in Eastern Europe it lasted longer. It was possible to have it for longer periods of time. Just another side note, because the minhag for most Jews today is, when I say most Jews, I would say most Ashkenazic Jews today, is actually to use chazeres with mar, what we call mar, which is horseradish. Actually, to use both of them together. So I just want to tell you, according to Pshat, what that means, because the Mishnah says that these are the yirakas that a person is yotze the mitzvah. These are the types of vegetables that we can have, and the Mishnah mentions them all 5, and then the Mishnah says umitztarfim lekazayis, and they're all combined to a kazayis. What does that mean? So Rashi says, im ein le'echad mehem kazayis, if you don't have a kazayis, the full measurement of either horseradish or this romaine lettuce, but you only have a half of kazayis of an olive of this amount and a half of that amount. You can mitzvah if you can combine these two to create a kazayis. So this is what Rashi seems to say that if you don't have, but what happens is technically if you do have a kazayis of each of them, it seems that Rashi is saying that you're not allowed to do this. You're only allowed to do this if you don't have a kazayis of that. And this is the way actually the Ran also understands Rashi. That's what it means to start from the kazayis. However, most poskim, some poskim because of that, say that if you do this, you have to take a kazayis of each one. But la halacha, we're not makbid, and we are mitzvah, and Alter Rebbe actually says you can take that you can mitzvah all of them together. The Aruch HaShulchan also rules like that, and he brings that l'chein yishlenu shleichem at chazeres im at hamcha shetoiv lechem yachad. The Aruch HaShulchan actually says this is the way the common custom in Eastern Europe was, to take a little bit of romaine lettuce together with some horseradish. Now, what happens when you eat horseradish? What happens when you eat mar? So when you eat mar, something very interesting happens. You start off, when you eat the mar, when a person starts to eat the mar, they'll realize that the mar is very bitter, has a very bitter taste. And as you're chewing further and further the mar, the more you chew, the sweeter it becomes. So what you're doing in the process is actually saying that the mavis, the death of mar, the death of the experience of merirus, of now is being transformed into something sweet. So you have to chew the mar until it becomes sweet. And the Arizal actually writes this clearly in Shar Kavonis. And he says, I just want to read very quickly. This is the idea of mar, which is the numeric value of the word mavis, which soy dinim hamorim, which represents these very harsh, constricted dinim, constricted.
I have a question.
Sorry, we'll take questions in a moment. This very high level of constriction, And Ulumatka, the idea is to sweeten, idea Meshachas HaChaim, and through drawing life, which we'll say what that means. Therefore, you have to actually experience, you have to feel the taste of the bitterness. Like the Gemara says, and if you swallow the mara, add until you chew it with your teeth. Because through chewing with the teeth, that's the way we create hamtakas adin, the sweetening of din. Like the Arizal explains in Shara Mitzvahs and Parshas Ekev, but long barichas, and the idea of chila, of how we eat, dafka specifically through our teeth, which the teeth break things down and chew things down. So when we chew it through our teeth, we're mamtik the din, and we're sweetening the din of mar. So it goes from a place of merirus to a place of mesikus, from a place of bitterness to a place of actually sweetness. Chazeres, like we saw in the Gemara Lamates, Chazeres actually is the opposite. When the Gemara says ma chazeres, ma mar, which it calls it mar, shet chilase rach, v'soife kasha, that in the beginning it's soft and it's harsh at the end. So it actually is the reverse process. Now the Yerushalmi actually says this a little more clearly. What does it mean chilase rach v'soife kasha? And this is what the Alter Rebbe brings on the Poskim, that the idea is that it first represents something that's sweet or nice, and then it becomes harsh. So it means either the root or if you let it stay. So simply also it actually means that if you taste it long enough. And this is what actually the Yerushalmi and Pesachim on that same Gemara, Perek Beis, writes. Ma chazer tchilase masuk v'soifoi mar. Just like a chazeres is the beginning bitter, the same as with, and then eventually, beginning it's sweet, and then eventually becomes bitter. The same thing also with the Egyptians, that we were enslaved by perach, with the sweet mouth and the easy mouth, going into slavery, and then eventually it becomes something that's very difficult. So the chazeres it has an underlying bitterness, and it works in the reverse, that it starts off more sweet and ends up more bitter, and it starts more bitter, ends up more sweet. So we could say that the chazeres represents the descent into slavery, and the mara, which we call mara, which is a horseradish, is once we're enslaved, which you feel the depth of the idea of marirs, which brings us to a place of sweetening. And this is what the Maram Panu writes very clearly, that we have to specifically eat the mara, breaking it down through our teeth. Now, the Gemara calls the chazeres is sacha. I'm sorry, is the chasa. Okay, now that's chasa Kadosh Baruch. Okay, so we'll go on further. This is what the idea of the mar is. So let's get to let's have a little time to get to Korach. So this is the idea of the mar, that it's the elevation now of the bitterness into something sweet, and then comes the highest level, which we make berach, which we do Korach. What do we do when we do with Korach? Korach, we take the lowest matzah, which represents das, which is the idea of das. We take the lowest matzah, which is the idea of das, which is going to create unity. Das is mechaber, and we make a sandwich. And we make a sandwich, and we say that this sandwich is kain hasa ilu b'zon sameish b'migdash hayakayim. This is the same sandwich, similar to the sandwich that Hillel made. Now, even though technically Hillel made a sandwich with Pesach, Matzah, and Mar, which means Hillel's sandwich was together with the carbon Pesach, with the actual offering of Pesach. It wasn't just Matzah and Mar. Even though the Shittas Rambam is that it was only Matzah Mar, it was not a Pesach, but the most poskim say that it was Pesach, Matzah, Mar. So therefore, we do a commemoration for that sandwich. We also do the sandwich. So what? And then we say Matzah's Marayim Mirchlu, and we say a pasuk in Bamidbar test, which actually talks about the Pesach Sheni, about the second Pesach, if we don't bring the first Pesach. And the reason why we do this is we could say this is the meal, this is the sandwich that Hillel created, and we are anticipating that tonight we're just making a resemblance, a zecher to the sandwich, even though we don't have the meat in the sandwich, which is a kind of funny zecher because we're not having the main ingredient of the sandwich, even though according to the Rambam that is the sandwich, but according to others it's not the sandwich, so why don't we have the meat? But we say that this will actually be a precursor for the future, that hopefully, God willing, this year will already be zoiche to make the Pesach Sheni, the second offering of Pesach in Iyar. So therefore, we bring down this pasuk that's connected to the Pesach Sheni. Why don't we only eat? If you want to Yotzer Das Hillel, because we don't know according to who's the opinion, which opinion is correct, the opinion of the sages or the opinion of Hillel, whether we have to eat Pesach, Matzah, and Mar separate, or we have to eat them in one sandwich. Why don't we do them today as one sandwich? Why do we have to eat Matzah alone, Mar alone, and then Matzah and Mar together? So that has to do with a technical thing, which is called mitzvah vat lezu, where one mitzvah can cancel out another mitzvah, especially if one mitzvah is only midarabanan. Mar tonight is only midarabanan, so we'll cancel out the mitzvah. But the point of what we're doing with this the sandwich, is now we're saying there's a total sweetening of everything. Before we ate matzah alone, which is Mechadim Nusa, we brought down Moiched Abba. Now, then we ate the mora, which is the idea of mavis, which we chewed until it became hamtakas adin, it became sweet, until through our teeth we were able to literally feel the taste of the sweetness of the mora. And now we take an entire sandwich and we collapse the matzah and the mora together, and we reach a place of total achdas. This is the idea, which goes back to the idea which you spoke about, Diana, which is the idea of recognition of the future and the present. That this is the higher level. There's b'chol levavcha, b'chol nafsha, b'chol b'yidecha. There's a level of b'chol levavcha, with all your heart, b'shnei yitzerecha. The level of b'shnei yitzerecha is when we can eat and everything can be drawn in together and to create this wonderful sandwich. And this is the ultimate sweetening of Amtakas Adin. Once we do the full Amtakas Adin of the katnas of Morer and also in Koyach, then we can start eating Shulchan Aruch. And like we mentioned before, just to conclude, we mentioned before from the Izarua that one of the reasons why he says that we don't make a bracha on the halal is because there's going to be a hefsek, there's going to be an intermission where we're going to eat the Shulchan Aruch. So from a halachic perspective, and the Netziv brings this down, we're saying that the meal that we eat tonight on Leil HaSeder is sandwiched in between, is placed right in between the halal, because tonight, part of saying halal is not just b'dibur, to thanking Hashem with our mouth, but to actually eat and enjoy the meal, and to understand that this is not an interruption. It's not a hesach hadas. It's actually part of, the Rav Pinson said, it's part of the mitzvah of eating it, part of tonight's holiness of the eating. They saw and they ate what it talks about after Matan Torah, which means that it was not a negative thing. They were able to experience the fullness of life in eating and in doing the physical, tangible things that they were able to be doing, in that, to experience that as part of the halal Ta'akadosh Baruch Hu. And this is what the Arizal says, that the hamshacha that we draw down on the Seder night, the final hamshacha where we draw down the things, the yichudim of finally drawing down the yichud between Zah and Malchus, between the higher levels, the transcendent levels, until the level of Asiyah, the physical level, is during the meal. So now we partake, and our whole physicality is transformed into a spiritual meal. Therefore, tonight, on the night of the Leil Seder, like it's brought down in Shulchan Aruch, we have to bring out our finest dishes and our finest way of sitting, and our nicest dishes, to really celebrate the meal in the highest level. And the Orchos Chaim writes that we have to, when we sit down to eat the Leil Seder, the Shulchan Aruch, we should banish all our worries and our doubts and uncertainties and experience it with great joy, because now we're experiencing the joy of the connection of the Moichin Abba, of the clarity, of the Emunah, of the faith, of the Dveikus that we are experiencing with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, of the real godless that was worked out through all the katnus that we just went through. Now we can sweeten it, and we can taste the beauty in it, and taste the deliciousness of it, and even experience that in the meal, the physical meal. So therefore, like it's brought down in Seder Ayoim from the Talmid of Ramak and from Tzvas, that he says that we should eat a meal in a leisurely, with a slow pace, is to do with great joy, and to celebrate the Sudas, the meal of Yom Tiv, like we're royal people. And this is what the beginning of Shulchan Aruch. And God willing, Be'ez Hashem, we'll have time tomorrow. We'll continue a little bit with some of there's a few of the minhagim that we do in Shulchan Aruch, which is like eating the egg, etc. And then we'll start going into Tzafon, Be'er, Chal, and Nitzah, Be'ezer Hashem Yisborach. Okay, Zachariah, you're going to field some questions.
If anybody has a question, feel free to raise your hand. You can find it in the More tab. The question from Harry.
Yeah.
The Rav mentioned very briefly. Actually, also in the situation of using the teeth specifically, is the piece to be mamtik the dinim of maror.
Yeah.
Why that? How does that connect to knocking out the teeth of the rasha? Does he lose his ability to be mamtik dinim or?
Mamash Yuval. What you're saying, David, this is so. The Kodesh Magid says. The Kodesh Magid writes that afat ekei shina. Why do we have to blunt out his teeth? You're saying that if you don't believe that there's a possibility for redemption, for geula, then you can't eat. You can't do Yom Tov Sadin. Then you can't elevate that. Afat ekei shina is saying you don't deserve to eat. This is actually what you're saying is very correct. It's mamash the same thing. When a person is stuck in a place, what's a rasha? The difference between a tzaddik and a rasha is a tzaddik lives with emunah, lives with faith, lives with hope, and lives with anticipation. Tzaddik b'menasa yichya, a person that's alive, it's always hoping. And a rasha is a person that says that there's no hope, there's no possibility, and is stuck. So a person that doesn't believe with hope and possibility and the possibility for redemption, hakei yeshinav, tell him you don't deserve to eat, you can't eat, because you don't have the potential and the faculties to create a tikkun, to create amtakas sadin. So this is mamash the kodesh of Magid's words.
I think that's all the questions.
Valdik. We already reached a place of beyond questions. So first we started with the Seder with questions. Now we're godless. We have no more questions anymore.
Oh, I think we have one question from Adi Newman.
Yeah.
Hi, good evening.
Good evening.
I was wondering, you were saying before, so during the act of the Seder, when we're eating, we're having it as a spiritual meal. Is it the zibuk with the light or with Shechina?
The Shechina is connected with Feres, with Zohar. The whole idea of Golus is when the moichin, when the intelligence, what the Arizal calls moichin, what the Baal Shem Tov calls chayas, when the intelligence is not active, the body becomes placid. And when the body becomes placid, it doesn't have chayas, there cannot be a chibur between Zohar and a malchus, between the masculine and the feminine, which represents transcendence and immanence. So when there's no moichin, that's the whole problem. That's the whole Golus Mitzrayim. There's no moichin, there's no intelligence, no clarity. The whole idea of eating matzah and drinking wine, matzah is connected to the moichin to Abba, and wine is connected to the moichin to Ima. And then and then Magid, which we spoke about the Meitzah Garden, this is all trying to break out the moichin, to reveal the moichin. Once the moichin is revealed, then becomes a yichud shalom, becomes a yichud between the highest levels and the lowest levels, and they become unified. So once these two become unified, there's no longer a separation between the physical and the spiritual. The physicality becomes so transformed that it becomes one with the spirituality. Therefore, our meal becomes like halal. So it's a complete unity between Zohar and Malchus, and they're in a complete state of union.
We have one question from Sam Schertz.
Yeah.
Shalom Aleichem. Just on the point of Charosas, that it's all Paris Israel, Paris of Mashiach, call it.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I'm just trying to get it clear. It's that we're taking the Mara or whatever we thought was really bitter and raising it up?
Yes. Sweetening it. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
You say that?
Just got a pleasure to meet you over this.
Okay.
Last question from Shlomo.
Yeah, Vada.
I was going to say, this all roots back to Pesach being an Abrahamic holiday, right? Like it's Avram's Chag, because it's so Achila.
Oh, yeah. Avram's Achila Dafke, not Shia. Yeah.
He really made the first Pesach.
Correct. Okay, Be'ez Hashem, we'll see you all tomorrow, and we'll continue learning with Hashem's help. Sei gesund.
Thank you.